And till the time Dr. Anand loads up the presentation, I would also like to share a quick fact about the Remidio, which is that they have been able to screen close to 10 million patients globally for the chronic as well as acute eye conditions through having an installed base of 3,000 plus devices, majorly in India and the US. So over to you, Dr. Anand. You can start sharing your screen and talk about the solution.
Sure. I just want to make sure that you're able to hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You're able to see my slides as well?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
So very quickly, thank you so much, Shantanu, and thanks also to Prashant and Meena for setting the context as well as to the field experts. I think I'm going to be spending not the full 10 minutes, but hopefully less than that about the innovation itself and maybe end with a demonstration. But really ensure that there's enough time given to Dr. Venkatesh, who is the field expert, who may be able to talk more about the innovation and its impact itself. So what we are focused on is to ask the question, if you have an ocular disease, especially those that are acute or chronic, how do we think of a new standard of care that allows you to do testing outside of the specialist context? That's really a lot of what we are going to be focused on. And today, while we have devices all the way from cataract to refractive error assessment to looking at retinal diseases besides glaucoma, we'll be focused on the glaucoma solution from us. So specifically, these are numbers in terms of the public health burden. And I fully agree with Arvind, who started off saying that I think we need to look at this as a global problem rather than looking at it as an India problem alone. We need to look at how do you create access in order to do it in a manner where that becomes the new standard of care in how we approach patient management. So today, the top three retinal causes of preventable blindness are diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, and ARMD. And the numbers are pretty high globally that the market presents itself well for a novel solution, especially those that are done closer to the patient. Now, the problem in case of glaucoma is one of those conditions, chronic conditions, where it remains undetected in 90% of the patients who are actually having it but don't know about it in a developing world. And most cases, it's too advanced by the time it's detected. By the time you start having clinical symptoms, it's a little too late. And that's one of the biggest problems that's often seen with this particular disease. So what it does is basically when it remains undetected, it results in visual impairment if detected too late, affects your quality of life, and eventually the treatment and care costs are significantly high if it is detected much later in the disease etiology. So really that's where screening in terms of early detection makes a lot of sense. Now, what we have as a solution is, again, the context as well as the features are very similar, which is something which is very easy to use, can be portable. You take images of the retina without having to need dilation. So instead of necessarily thinking in terms of an appointment with the ophthalmologist, is there a way by which you may be able to do this outside of ophthalmology settings and optometry settings is the challenge that we have taken on. This is an FDA registered and CE marked device, takes images of the retina without needing pupil dilation and is integrated with an offline AI. And the reason for offline is primarily because it's extremely difficult to think in terms of care and screening models, especially if that's dependent on infrastructure that may not necessarily be sustainable in all settings. And which is the reason why, unlike, let's say, Google and others who've looked at it from the perspective of AI models on the cloud, we have looked at AI models being integrated on the device itself. Now, this device has gone through more than 30 plus peer-reviewed publications, and the AI algorithms on diabetic retinopathy have had roughly around 7 to 8 clinical publications in open access journals, including Nature Eye, JAMA Ophthalmology, and others. And what I'm going to be focusing on today is just one important point, which is screening is great, but screening by itself without a loop closure to care or treatment is really not that relevant. So this is one paper that came out of the government of Kerala who used our devices in public health centers, close to around 147 of them. And they did a pilot in the first 16 where they were able to show that 90% of those did not know they had diabetic retinopathy. And the same is what we expect is also going to be seen in case of glaucoma as well. But the reason for the slide is to essentially make the point that technology is great, screening is great, but unless and otherwise we don't follow it up with a standard of care for those that actually get picked up as having being at risk for the disease, it becomes a little difficult to ensure that there is an impact. So therefore, the way in which we work is to ensure that we work with partners where the care gap closure happens. For example, in case of the government of Kerala, for something as low as 400 rupees a patient, they are able to do diabetic retinopathy screening as well as treatment. And that's because it's averaged across a large number of those who may not need treatment, but actually get screened to know that they actually are at a stage of disease where they can manage with their diet alone. Now, let's quickly move to the next part, which is glaucoma. Here, the intent is to have a device and the AI, which is able to ensure that a primary care physician or a nurse practitioner. In India, we work with healthcare workers. In the US, we work with physician assistants and medical assistants that they can take a very quick image and within 2 to 2.5 minutes, the AI, along with the imaging exercises completed, in less than 10 seconds, the AI is able to say whether or not there is a need for referable glaucoma, referral to a specialist. Now, this is just to get into a little bit of the specifics. It looks for the part of your retina called the cup and disc on the optic nerve head and looks for certain changes there. And also looks for changes with respect to vessels that actually come out of it. So the intent is not to make this too technical, but to say that it looks for the same canonical features that a specialist would look for. And what it therefore allows you to do is to be able to have a replacement for teleophthalmology or replacement for an ophthalmologist if someone may not be available nearby to be able to do the teleophthalmic screening or the direct visual observation of the patient.